Amazon isn't automating your job. That would be obvious. Instead, it's doing something quieter. It's telling every employer in America what your labor is worth. As of 2023, Amazon operates over 750,000 robots across its fulfillment network. That's a fleet larger than the active duty United States Army. And it means Amazon now deploys roughly one robot for every 1.8 human warehouse workers it employs. If you work in logistics, fulfillment, distribution, or any job that involves moving physical things through physical space, that ratio has a direct line to your paycheck. We're going to explain exactly how that mechanism works, and why the number Amazon keeps announcing publicly is probably the wrong number to focus on. Amazon raises minimum wage to $22. Proof robots create better jobs. Warehouse employment at all-time high. Automation panic overblown. MIT study. Each robot added to a commuting zone cuts wages by 0.4%. Amazon's Sequoia system cuts fulfillment time 25%. Shareholders cheer. My distribution center just posted the same roll at $3 less than last year. What happened? The robots aren't taking jobs, they're taking raises. Okay, so there's a real conversation happening in the labor economics literature that almost never makes it onto the news ticker. And the reason it doesn't is that the mechanism isn't dramatic. Nobody got fired. The factory didn't close. What happened instead is something quieter and, honestly, more permanent. Let's build this from the ground up. Amazon employs roughly 1.5 million people in the United States, concentrated across 75-plus metro labor markets. At its 2021 peak, it employed 1.6 million globally, making it the second-largest private employer in the country, behind only Walmart. That scale means Amazon's wage decisions function less like a single company's HR policy and more like a regional minimum wage law for logistics workers. The median warehouse picker wage in 2019 sat at $15.25 per hour, according to the BLS. Then the pandemic labor shortage hit, and Amazon was posting $24 to $27 an hour in hot markets to fill seats. Then the shortage eased. Amazon announced its $22 floor. Everyone applauded, and the conversation moved on. But real offered wages in newly roboticized facilities have quietly compressed from those 2021 peaks. So the headline number went up, and the actual competitive offer went down. That's not an accident. Now, there's a term for what Amazon is doing to regional labor markets, and it is the labor market equivalent of a Tinder date who shows up looking better than the photos, but never actually calls back. The term is monopsony. A monopsony is the labor market mirror image of a monopoly. Instead of one dominant seller, it describes one dominant buyer of labor, which gives that employer outsized power to set wages below what a competitive market would produce. When a single employer accounts for a disproportionate share of jobs in a region, workers lose the outside offer leverage that normally keeps wages honest. You might think monopsony only applies to company towns, old mining villages, that kind of thing. In practice, Amazon has quietly recreated it in zip codes across the country. In Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, the Inland Empire in California, and Columbus, Ohio, Amazon often represents 8 to 15% of all private employment. That's not a company, that's a weather system. But here's the thing, Amazon didn't just stumble into this position. In 2012, Amazon acquired robotics firm Kiva Systems for $775 million, at the time the largest acquisition in Amazon's history, and immediately pulled Kiva's products from the open market. Competitors couldn't license the technology. $775 million bought Amazon not just a robot fleet, but a decade-long automation moat. That's one robot company acquisition doing the work of a decade's worth of wage negotiation leverage. And it set the stage for what we're calling the Amazon wage floor effect. Here's how the mechanism actually runs, in 3 chapters. Chapter 1, how robots reset the productivity baseline. Before Kiva robots, a warehouse picker walked roughly 12 miles per shift, retrieving items from static shelving. Kiva robots brought the shelves to the picker, cutting walk time by 60% and boosting output per labor hour by a factor of 2 to 3 by Amazon's own figures. Amazon's Sparrow robotic arm, deployed in 2022, can now identify, select, and move millions of distinct product types, directly displacing the picking task that accounts for roughly 50% of all warehouse labor hours. Picking was the last major task considered too unstructured for automation. Sparrow ended that conversation. So what does this mean in wage terms? Amazon can profitably pay $22 per hour to a worker whose robot-assisted output used to require $28 in labor costs to staff. The worker didn't get a raise that matched the productivity gain. Amazon captured it. Competing employers, UPS, FedEx, Walmart distribution centers, now face workers who benchmark their wage expectations against Amazon's $22 floor, which sounds generous until you realize the productivity-adjusted value of that wage has quietly fallen. The floor went up nominally. The real deal got worse. Chapter 2. The Geographic Wage Anchor. This is probably the part Amazon's PR team would rather we skip. Amazon deliberately places fulfillment centers in mid-size metro labor markets where they will represent an enormous share of local employment. When Amazon publicly announces a $22 wage floor, local media covers it as good news, every time, without exception, and every other warehouse employer in that zip code uses it as a ceiling, not a floor. Why would they offer $25 if the dominant employer is at $22 and workers are still showing up? According to a 2022 study by economists Evan Starr and Austin Nichols, counties where Amazon opens a fulfillment center see surrounding warehouse wages stagnate or decline within 3 years, consistent with monopsony wage suppression. The effect is strongest in rural counties where Amazon becomes the only large logistics employer, exactly the communities that celebrated the ribbon cutting. MIT economist Darren Acemoglu published research estimating that each additional robot per 1,000 workers in a commuting zone reduces wages in that zone by 0.4 to 0.9%, an effect concentrated almost entirely on workers without a 4-year college degree. Scaled to 750,000 robots, that's not a rounding error. It's the announcement that does the most damage. Chapter 3. Why the $22 number is political camouflage. Andy Jassy publicly champions Amazon's $22 minimum as evidence that automation and worker prosperity coexist. Surely that means the market is self-correcting, right? Yeah, no. $22 in 2024 dollars equals roughly $17.50 in 2019 purchasing power. Amazon's revenue per employee has grown 34% since 2019, while median warehouse compensation has grown roughly 8% in real terms. The gap between those two numbers is where the productivity gain from 750,000 robots went. According to the BLS, labor's share of United States non-farm business income fell from roughly 63% in the early 2000s to approximately 56% by 2022. Each percentage point drop represents roughly $250 billion per year redirected from wages to capital returns. That is, cumulatively, one of the largest silent wealth transfers in modern economic history. And Amazon's automation build-out is one of the cleaner illustrations of the mechanism. Meanwhile, Amazon spent approximately $75 billion on capital expenditures in 2022, with the majority directed at fulfillment infrastructure and automation, more than the entire annual GDP of Luxembourg. When a single firm invests at that scale in labor-replacing technology, the productivity gains accrue almost entirely to shareholders, unless workers have sufficient bargaining power to capture a share. So, how's the bargaining power going? The FTC estimated in 2023 that roughly 30 million United States workers, including a significant share of warehouse and logistics employees, are currently bound by non-compete clauses that restrict their ability to take jobs at competing employers. For warehouse workers, non-competes effectively replicate the wage suppression math of a monopsony, even in markets where multiple employers nominally compete. In April 2024, the FTC issued a final rule banning most non-competes nationwide, estimating it would raise worker wages by $300 billion over 10 years. $300 billion sounds huge. Divided across affected workers, that's roughly $524 per worker per year. Meaningful, not transformative. The National Labor Relations Act guarantees workers the right to organize. Amazon spent an estimated $4.3 million on anti-union consultants in 2021 alone, according to Department of Labor filings. In April 2022, the Amazon Labor Union, founded by former Amazon employee Chris Smalls, won a landmark vote at the JFK 8 Fulfillment Center in Staten Island, the first successful union vote at any Amazon United States facility. Without a ratified contract, workers at JFK 8 continued under the same conditions. The win was real, the raises were not. But Amazon's injury data at least shows the robots are making things safer. Surely warehouses with robots are better for workers, right? A 2023 Strategic Organizing Center report found that Amazon's serious injury rate in robotic fulfillment centers was 69% higher than at its non-robotic facilities. Robots accelerate the pace of work for the humans who remain, a dynamic economists call speed up, which erodes the implicit wage premium workers normally extract for tolerating hazardous conditions. The robots aren't dangerous because of what they do. They're dangerous because of what they demand from the people working next to them. Let's run the counterfactual. If Amazon had not acquired Kiva in 2012, BLS projections at the time forecast median picker wages reaching $19 to $21 per hour in real 2024 dollars without automation suppression. They currently sit at roughly $17.50 real. The Amazon wage floor effect doesn't require Amazon to fire anyone. It just has to keep existing, keep deploying, and keep announcing that $22 number so every other employer in America knows exactly how little they have to offer. The OECD estimated in 2023 that 27% of jobs in member countries face high automation risk, with transportation, storage, and warehousing among the three most exposed sectors. For the 1.7 million Americans employed in warehousing and storage, that is not a hypothetical. It is a sector-wide wage ceiling enforced by the credible threat of substitution. Amazon's next system, Sequoia paired with Digit, a bipedal humanoid robot now in pilot, targets trailer unloading and irregular sorting. Those are the last tasks that still require human judgment inside a fulfillment center. When those go, the final justification for a wage premium in warehouse work disappears too. The uncomfortable truth is that the Amazon wage floor effect is legal, efficient, and completely invisible in aggregate statistics. Total warehouse employment is up. Nominal wages are up. Robots are photographed next to smiling workers in every earnings call. What the statistics don't show is the counterfactual. What those wages would have been without the productivity anchor being used to justify compression. The next time you see a headline about Amazon raising its minimum wage, ask what the robots made that raise affordable, and who didn't get the version of that raise that matched their actual productivity contribution. That's the Amazon wage floor effect. Not a layoff, not a factory closing, just the quiet architecture of how your salary floor gets poured.